Honorable Faleke is here. He was the headmaster, commander, arranger, the big orchestra of our campaign, and he worked tirelessly. Sometimes when I look at him at night, I pray especially that God please sustain him. He's a very reliable ally, very reliable individual. So Lagos must continue to reward him. And equally, your son is here. Femi Gbajabiamila. Is the Abuja kingmaker. So let me just say to the governor, I listened carefully to you and thank you and the deputy governor and the speaker for holding forth strongly and committing yourself to the value that we cherished together. The result-oriented approach in a team to turn the ship around from cascading
Every major news story is with many perspectives and layered with different levels of impact.
Hello. What time did this happen? We will be right there.
At TVC News, we follow the big and major news, gathering the facts, witnessing the outcome.
I am here live at the aftermath of the approval of the new national minimum wage.
We are TV Station of the Year, not just for breaking news, but for being first, fair and accurate.
Our culture and our tradition to give value to your kingdoms and to your areas. And to the local government, so Kolade, we are in it together. But of
Rolihlahla Mandela was born into the Madiba clan on 18th July 1918. He got involved in politics in 1942 as he helped to form ANC Youth League. He was married to Evelyn Mays and they had 4 children. Mandela was arrested in a countrywide police swoop on 5th December 1956, which led to the 1956 treason trial. Before the end of the treason trial, he wrote to Prime Minister for vote to include a national convention on a non-racial constitution, and failure to adhere would result to a national strike. In August, he was arrested and charged for leaving the country without a permit and inciting workers to strike. He was convicted and sentenced to 5 years imprisonment. On 9th of October 1963, he was on trial with 10 others for sabotage in what became known as the Revolver trial. On the 11th of June 1964, Mandela and 7 other accused were convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. He was later released from its gates on Sunday, 11th of February 1990, 9 days after the unbanning of the ANC and the PAC. Nelson Mandela never wavered in his devotion to democracy, equality and learning as he immersed himself in official talks to end white minority rule. In 1991, he was elected ANC president to replace his ailing friend, Oliver Tambo. In 1993, he and President F.W. de Klerk jointly won the Nobel Peace Prize, and on 27th April 1994, he voted for the first time in his life. On 10th May, he was inaugurated as South Africa's first democratically elected president. He, however, stepped down in 1999.
Your campaign will not be in vain when we work together. I think I've addressed all the issues, and I'm very, very grateful. I got to go and answer some other calls. I thank all of you, particularly, once again, the Obas, chiefs, representatives of KBC. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Without your local support, without your prayers, I got some messages, WhatsApp, texts, and all of that. I tell you, if you don't hear from me, 2 phones have been crushed. It's part of the success. Part of what I asked for. I campaigned for this job. I asked for your prayers and support, and you did. So this is what you get. And send your son, brother, and uncle to Abuja. Don't think you will access him easily like you used to do. It's the result of your success. And you just have to bear it. Thank you very, very much. God bless you. Your children too will achieve a lot. God will keep you in good health. Will keep you in happiness. Give you long life. Keep Lagos one of the most profitable states in Nigeria. You haven't seen anything yet. You will see more. Thank you very much.
Let's give the applause up to Mr. President. Thank you very much, Mr. President, sir. I would like to inform you that we will not today to go like that without not keeping the images of the governor. So I'll be announcing names those who will join Mr. President outside for.
Welcome back from the live telecast. We'll now continue with our regular programs. Stay tuned.
So the best we can then do is look at what other considerations the governor will assign more weight to in deciding which direction to go.
Really not the best time to be a CBN governor, I must say. But let's look at our reserves. Dr. Ridikwe, please, you need to explain to us here. Before now, we used to think it was about $33 billion US, but we've come to reality to see what is on ground. Now, the CBN cannot even support the FX market like they used to do. Research shows that about $17 billion was used to defend the Naira in 2022, about 1.4 billion Naira every month. We cannot continue that at the moment. So what do you make of our reserves? Where do we go from here?
Very good question, I will say. And it's also good you raised this because we look at the issues around external reserves. Number one is that when you talk about your external reserves, it is the outcome of surpluses in your past trade and investment and borrowing relationship with the rest of the world. In which case, if you have, let's say, a surplus in your balance of trade, which means we exported more than we imported, that gives us a surplus. If we have a similar thing play out in the debt window and also the investment window, then we probably will have a surplus balance of payments. That brings an accretion to reserve, which means on an ongoing basis, our interaction with the rest of the world will determine whether we're adding to our reserves or taking out of it. So for me, therefore, in interpreting that, it is not so much as a concern that CBN is putting out money into the FX market, which some analysts interpret as defending the Naira. And I always challenge that assumption that if the CBN doesn't defend the Naira, should it defend the dollar or pound sterling or the euro or any other currency? Every reserve or central bank around the world defends its own currency. How do they do that? So that now is the real issue. Within which framework? Do they do that in a market where the central bank fixes the rate? Or where the central bank says, let the market determine the rate, and then we will intervene when it becomes necessary. As you are taking from the reserve to intervene in the market, you are also, I'm now bringing those two issues together, you are also receiving additions to it, which I called earlier, accretion to reserve. So in which case, if you look at our external reserves, in the last 11 months now, let's say up to date, you find that the decrease in that figure is not anything significant as to warrant an emergency, so to say. So the other side to it is now what you said earlier. And there are obligations that have matured, but we are yet to extinguish. So we take note of those, and then we back it out of what we see today. If we go to the website of the Central Bank of Nigeria, about $33.something billion. Now, so if you look at that and back out the matured obligations, that gives you what is available, contrary to the common refrain that we have only 3 billion, which is incorrect. In fact, we call it dubious analysis. Okay? So the real correct analysis is what obligations have matured, forward transactions that are matured, which ones are they, which ones are authentic and confirmed. That's on the one side. Is there also, like we have heard, that the central bank borrowed money and used part of our reserve as cash collateral? Okay? What does that mean? When you back that out of what you see today, then it means you have a portion left that you now compare with your trade figure. In which case, we look at our imports bill. What is the average import bill per month? Then we use that figure to divide the external reserve that is available. That is to say, the liquid portion less those matured obligations. If you check that out today, we are looking at about 8.25 months cover. Minimum required to guarantee stable exchange value of your currency is 6 months, especially when you are not running an economy that is in crisis. If the economy is in recession or in depression or slump, as we call it in economics, that is when you can now say, okay, that minimum cover should be not less than 11 months. So the argument then is that Nigeria is a growing concern in the sense that we are still selling and buying from the rest of the world. So it would be wrong, therefore, to take all obligations of Nigeria and back them out of our external reserves. What is correct to be backed out will be the matured obligations. So if you do all that, it means we are not in a crisis from that perspective. So the real interpretation of the crisis we face today is speculative attack. And that is why we have a currency crisis. Speculative attack, of course, which speaks to the policy we have right now, unified exchange rate. So in my own view, that is an area I expect the central bank governor to talk to. Now, we've adopted that, which means market interaction between demand and supply for foreign currencies will determine the market clearing price, that's the exchange rate we deal with on a daily basis. Now, if the market does that, it means that CBN is no longer fixing rates or intervening with respect to price, but intervening in terms of selling or buying as the case may be. So if that is the position that CBN will continue to take, that means we likely still see further adverse movement in the value of the naira. And why do I say that? History, on the one hand, the recent one, that is looking at when that policy was adopted, mid-2023, up until date, there has been no improvement in the supply situation in the FX market, which means unified exchange rate is not enough as a policy tool to increase supply in the market. So that is very clear from the recent data. Then when we look also at history, especially occasions where we also adopted this kind of policy, and I make reference to September 1986, then March 1993, and then June or July 2016. If you look at those dates and come back to where we are today, you find that the difference between those dates when we did that and November 2008, when we did a similar thing, is simply that in 2008, our external reserves was very strong. So we were able to contain the exit of foreign investors on the one hand, and also obligations that were maturing that we had to extinguish. But in those other dates I mentioned, the pocket was very lean, which is what we are facing today. So I expect the CBN governor to also say something about unified exchange rate policy, whether it is something they want to sustain, or we'll be looking away from that now and say, look, let's stay where we are and now look at issues relating to supply. So, but of course, these are the things I expect him to also speak about.
Itself, let's talk about stability. Yes, many will say Nigerian banks are resilient. They are doing pretty well despite the challenges they face. But what would you say, or what should be, what do you expect from CBN as the regulator moving forward regards to the banks? Business people will tell you, we can't even get monies from the bank. Interest rates, high over there. So what do you think can be done moving forward?
Well, unfortunately, we run a monetary policy framework that leaves the market to determine the market clearing price, in which case, as we say in economics, the supply and demand for loanable funds will determine where interest rate will be. So which means there's an interplay for banks on the two sides of their balance sheet, as we call it. They buy money and they sell money. That is the fundamental business of banking. Buy money means they take deposits, and of course, the investment instrument that they also put out in order to attract funds into the system. But on the other hand, they now lend or create, credit on the other side. So in which case, what banks are giving out are not monies belonging to them. They are giving out monies belonging to other people. And so to that extent, it is what those people bringing money demand for as interest rates that likely determine the rate at which banks will lend. But also don't forget, banks are also profit-seeking entities. So they operate in an environment where they need also to deal with the cost of doing business, which is rising because of rising rate of inflation. And so in balancing all this and the demand to generate a margin that produces profit, banks in our environment today cannot escape lending at double digits, above 20%. That's the reality of the business because of its nature. So it then means that there are a number of things that must happen for banks to lend cheaper.
Looking forward, it's few weeks to the end of the year. What is your projection for the entire economy, Doc?
Well, as things stand today, given the data for third quarter of our GDP that came out today, it is very clear to me now that our economy may not grow anything on the aggregate this year up to 2.7%.